Hey everybody, Professor Snart just checking in from the cavern again here. Day 2 of our 5-week term, so I thought I might as well check in as far as some of the specifics of the unit that we're actually starting here instead of the more general kind of video welcome that I provided the other day. It's Tuesday and the other videos from Monday, so literally just a day away. So one of the things that I thought I would start with is once you have maybe the first couple of times clicked through a whole bunch of the links in the course and read the policies, and obviously you've got textbook information, and maybe looked at some of the units to see how everything's organized and laid out. You really do on a pretty regular basis, at least I would honestly say once a day, not that you have to do work necessarily that often, but certainly just to check in, take 5 minutes, see if is there a new announcement, is there new information that you need to take care of or address, or that somehow affects what's going on. You just want to make sure you know that on a daily basis, so you're checking into Blackboard on a pretty regular basis. What you don't want to do is finish the work for the unit, even if it's a couple of days ahead of the due date, and then just sort of forget about Blackboard and then log in when the next unit comes around. You really want to be kind of engaged on a more regular basis. So once you, like I said, have maybe clicked through some of the links and got a sense for the overall course, when you are logging in, of course, the first thing you'll see are these announcements. And they're most recent first, so actually if you haven't watched the previous welcome video, you do kind of want to scroll down and make sure you're watching the oldest one that you haven't seen, and then up to the top, the most recent. So watch the announcements. Often there's course-related material, not just kind of technical info or general stuff. And I will include text as well as video on a number of occasions, so be sure you're looking at that first. And then I would, as I'm doing here on my screen, first of all, click into the due dates. Even if you kind of know them already, I would click in just to remind yourself of what units you're trying to finish, your unit, and then of course the actual due date itself, and when the next one's coming and the next one, so you're sort of getting that bigger picture. So I can see here that units 1 and 2 are both due Friday, July 1st, so 2 units at the same time. Partly this leaves us a little flexibility towards the end of the class, or a little more time for those later units. But also, of course, the first unit is relatively simple as far as some basic readings, and then just getting introductions done. So I've checked my due dates. I know that units 1 and 2 are coming up Friday, so I want to click myself into the units. And then before actually starting the work, I would go through each of the units to see how they're laid out, what are the components that you need to complete, are there reading assignments associated with them, and all of that kind of stuff. So I look through Unit 1. There's this home page assignment, which is hopefully fairly straightforward. Really crucial that you include a picture of yourself. Particularly in Unit 1 here, what we're trying to do is really develop a sense of a kind of class community, a little more engagement than sometimes happens online. And having a picture of somebody is, just enormously important for imagining like real human beings out there sitting in empty offices all over America. Who knows? So including that picture of yourself is really important. The other thing that you want to do then for the homepage assignment is, of course, complete yours, but then go back through and look through some of your classmates, so you again get a sense that you're actually in a class with other people, even if we're not physically, present for one another face to face. The next assignment in there is a discussion board. Again, kind of repeating the whole introduction idea, but part of the reason that we're repeating that and using the discussion board is really just to get you used to how the discussion boards work in this fairly informal way before you're doing more of the formal work for the class. And then again, the other component to this discussion board that is not part of the homepage assignment is responding to at least one post by another classmate. So I've highlighted that. I'll often highlight that throughout. That really, even though your post would be much longer than a response post, they're almost 50-50 important, because again, getting that sense that there's like other people out there who are reading your work and you're invested in reading their work, and that sort of class unity or integrity is really important. I think it helps people feel connected and engaged and sort of committed to what's going on too. We also get into reading from our textbook then, jumping right into the deep end. In addition to our textbook reading then, you're also looking at some readings that I put together that are collected in this little readings tab here. And these are sort of like overarching themes that we'll return to throughout our class. And I will alert you to the fact that the final essay, we'll look on way down in Unit 10 it's going to be, will actually have you coming back to these readings essays, the liberal education, nature of the humanities, and that kind of thing, and sort of returning to these overarching ideas. So it is important now, early on in the course, to pay attention to these and to keep them present in your mind, even if we're not making a specific reference to them as we work our way through the subsequent units in the course. And they are these very grand ideas about how does this kind of class fit into our notions of like a liberal education. What is a masterpiece, and is that a term that is always positive? Does it have certain sort of other connotations that it's important to be aware of? The funny thing about the literature that we read for this class, and one of the reasons it's my favorite to teach, and again I get to engage with the literature every time, is that these kinds of masterpieces of world literature, it sounds very fancy, doesn't it? It's great to tell people at a part, I'm taking a masterpieces of world literature class. It's very, show them the massive textbooks that you have to use too. But there's this fascinating thing about this kind of literature, is that on the one hand, they're so valuable because they're timeless. They seem to be just so many of the themes or ideas or characters, they're archetypal. They're kinds of things that show up in the most recent movie that you've seen and all the way back to ancient, thousands of years old texts. So there's sort of continuity of human thought, of the way that we process ourselves in the world and the world around us and other people, and notions of the divine and the heroic and all these very grand ideas. So in some ways, these masterpieces of world lit are attractive precisely because they're timeless. They exist outside of a particular time period. But by the same token, ironically, one of the things that is so interesting about the works that we read is that they are so particular or so evocative of a particular culture, whether that's distant from us in terms of time, in terms of geography, or in terms of both of those things. So there's this strange way in which these works that we read are or can be compelling for almost completely opposite reasons. The one is that they exist out of time, and the other that they exist so much embedded in a particular time and place, and they arise out of a very particular culture. And that culture's, again, engagement with the world as it is, with the world that they can't quite imagine or see, whether it's the divine or the cosmic, or even simple relationships between people. Sometimes those are the most inscrutable that you can find. But so these are the kinds of ideas that we're getting into through these readings, very sort of broad, overarching, and often, pretty tricky ideas to work through in terms of exactly what a masterpiece is. Like, who gets to decide that? Is it just a matter of, well, we've always called it that, so I guess it is? How do we add new ones to the list? How do you get your short story in the Masterpieces of World Lit textbook? That'd be pretty cool, right? So all of these things are very big ideas, or very big questions that don't have answers, but they form this kind of umbrella under which we can sort of proceed through the more specific works in the course. And then, like I said before, at the end of the course, we'll return to some of these larger ideas and sort of reflect on maybe new ways that we've come to think about a masterpiece, or what it means to take a course like this in the larger scope of a liberal education, what it means to read literature of any kind, whether we call it a masterpiece of world lit or not. All of these things are really important, even though there's no simple kind of information or answers that we have access to. So really quickly then, just clicking into Unit 2, we begin, appropriately enough, maybe with creation myths as the first more specific kind of set of readings for our class, and as the title suggests, we're looking at various tellings of the creation of mankind, the creation of the world, from various cultures. And again, this is almost the masterpieces of World Lit dilemma in a nutshell, is that they are the same but different in so many ways. And again, it's really interesting to think historically about how cultures that are ostensibly so different from one another, they have no interaction, they're not Skyping with one another, but they produce these myths of creation where the particulars are quite different, which is interesting. So again, you get that particularity of place and time, but that basic kind of archetypal story they're so similar. So it's really interesting to encounter those differences and similarities arising from this, kind of fundamental narrative that cultures have to tell about themselves. How did we come to be here? So we really dive into kind of the deep end of narrative as far as the start of our course. Okay, well, that was a lot to talk about or think about. The good news or the bad news is that YouTube now allows me to make videos that are 15 minutes long as opposed to the usual 10. So I'll let you decide if that is that's good news or bad. As always, be in touch with me if you have any questions about what's going on, or questions about the assignments or some of the technical things in the course. And especially if you see things that are not correct in the course, or links that don't work, or an image doesn't show up correctly or something like that, be sure to let me know ASAP so I can get in there and fix it. Okay, I'll talk to everybody soon.